Hey guys, we're gonna do a bit of a different video today. I'm cooking. So I'm making that vegan granola recipe that I always talk about, and I have adapted it to fit my enjoyment. Basically, I'm taking the pecans and almonds, and I'm also adding macadamia, so I'm reducing the amount of these so I can add these, but all of the nut ratio is the same as the recipe. And this is vegan because instead of honey, it uses maple syrup. We're gonna get started. I'm gonna show you because this is the recipe that I talk about all of the time. So you have to preheat your oven to 300 degrees. Mine is already over here preheating. Then you mix, and I have already washed my hands. So you mix the oats, pecans, almonds, any nuts basically, flaked coconut, salt, flour, and the salt, flour, and cinnamon. So I need to get my measuring cup. You basically only need like a 1 cup measuring cup if you're okay to like wing it a little bit. So it's 3 cups of oats. I get this Bob's Red Mill version. Here's another like version. But yeah, 3 cups of oats. And of course, this is like the main ingredient in your granola. Okay, yeah, because it was just a few crumbs in there. So that's fine. So I still have a big, huge backup bag. Okay, now you do all of the nuts. Like I said, the actual recipe calls for pecans and almonds, but I like macadamia nuts and my husband loves macadamia nuts. So I just keep the 1.5 cups of nuts. I just divide it between pecans, almonds, and chopped macadamia nuts. And I get these little bags of Fisher's. They're already chopped. And I use slivered almonds. I really like that texture, and then the chopped pecans. So it already looks and smells delicious. Flaked coconut, there's so many options out there. I got the unsweetened flaked coconut, just Nature's Place organic, and it is so good. If you want to make yours a little bit sweeter, you can, but I just prefer the unsweetened. So we use 1/2 cup of this, so I just measure about half of my measuring cup. And it's okay if it's a little bit more. Now I do the flour, and it actually calls for this whole wheat flour. And the recipe, they used whole wheat pastry flour. But I just use this King Arthur flour. And it's 100% organic whole wheat flour, and it calls for 1/2 cup of this. So again, I just measure it in like my cup. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's half. And we have salt. I just use the Food Lion brand, like table salt. And on this, it calls for half a teaspoon, so I just sprinkle some in. And then the cinnamon, I also just, it says 1 teaspoon, so I use the sprinkle side, and I just sprinkle a little bit. Doesn't matter if you go over on those things. This is one of those recipes that does not have to be exact, and I think that's why I like it so much. So that's the first. I actually do stir it up a little bit so the cinnamon gets incorporated, the salt gets incorporated, the flour kind of gets incorporated, and it actually looks so delicious. With all those nuts and oats and cinnamon, it smells so good. And now we're gonna do the wet ingredients. So set that aside. I actually melt my oil, and I need 3/4 cup of melted coconut oil. So I'll probably need a little bit more than I have in the bottom of this one to dig some out and put it in here. So then I can just melt the whole container in the microwave. Again, there's hundreds of types of coconut oil. I just saw this brand, Luana coconut oil, and it was fairly cheap, so I got that. And I just do like maybe 25 seconds because it needs to be melted, like I said. So while that's cooking, because I'll measure that again, I get another bowl, like just like a cereal bowl. And this is where I do the coconut oil. I do the maple syrup, which I like this brand, but you can use whichever brand you want. A half a cup of this. So again, I'm just measuring about half in my cup, pouring that in. And this bottle is a cup. It's 8.5 fluid ounces. So I use about half of the bottle. So I can get 2 batches out of that. Check on my coconut oil. Yes, it's already melted. And like I said, for coconut oil, 3/4 of a cup. So I'll just measure that out. Oh, look at that. It was almost perfect. So I pour that in. Then I put my vanilla in. And vanilla, it's 1 teaspoon. So I just pour some in. And then it says whisk them together until smooth, and I think that's because the coconut oil, I melt mine in the microwave, so it's nice and liquidy, but I do kind of stir them together. And then you just pour this wet mixture over the dry ingredients. So you just pour it in there, make sure you get out all that maple syrup, because that's what makes it actually sweet, and that's what makes it stick together. And then you just mix until everything is nice and coated. It says to do it on the actual recipe, it says use a rimmed baking sheet, but an unlined baking sheet. I line mine with parchment paper. I use the Reynolds kitchen parchment paper, so I just put that on my rimmed cookie sheet here. And then I literally just pour the mixture on. I try to make sure that that's settled first. Pour the mixture on. And yes, I scrape out all the good stuff at the bottom. That is where all the deliciousness is. So I scrape all that out. And then using my spoon that I've used the entire time, I proceed to flatten it out to kind of do a nice even layer. And I'm actually gonna pop this in the oven for a total of 40 minutes at 300 degrees. But what you wanna do is you wanna set your timer for 20 minutes, because at 20 minutes, you wanna open the oven and you wanna stir everything up, like really give it a good toss. Then you wanna stick it back in for, I don't even take it out, I just slide the little rack out. So you give everything a good stir, and then you stick it back in for another 20 minutes. And then when it comes out the second time, you do not want to touch it. You just want to leave it as is. And as it cools, that's when you'll get those nice, yummy clusters. They'll start forming. And then when you go to take it off, you'll have some crumbles, but you'll have some that are stuck together, and those are just so yummy. I'm gonna throw this in the oven now. And we'll check in 20 minutes.
Okay, so this is halfway through the cooking process. This is when it's still really, like, pretty much really wet. So I stir everything up. And then I just lay it all back down. Okay, this next 20 minutes is where the magic literally happens. So I press it down really good with the spoon. I don't know if this helps it stick together. This is just what I do. Okay. All right. So that's it. Back in there for another 20 minutes.
20 minutes is up. It's a lot more brown. Here it is, fresh out of the oven after 40 minutes. It looks and smells so good. But now you need to be patient and just let it sit and cool until it is completely cooled down. Here we are with the completed granola. It is not 100% cool, but I'm starving. And the main reason I make this is so I can make an at-home acai bowl. That's a whole nother thing. But we can start. Oh man, it's really, okay. Sometimes you just have to go for it. Okay, you can see how some like chunks and then there is some kind of scatter. So I'm just gonna dress up this acai bowl. I do a lot of granola because I just love it so much. And then I'll let the rest cool. And then I put blueberries. This is literally my breakfast and it's 10:20. So here is my breakfast, my acai, and I have my granola and some blueberries, and I'm gonna eat that entire bowl. It's gonna be so delicious. But yeah, so that's my vegan granola recipe from Show Me the Yummy. I hope you enjoyed. I'm gonna go enjoy my breakfast, and I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye!